Welcome, everyone, to this Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. This podcast is designed to provide you with actionable insights and tools that you can use from discussing the research, stories, and background from recognized experts and practitioners to accelerate your impact in your current role. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Richard Osibanjo, who's a leading expert, author, executive coach, and speaker in transformational leadership and senior team performance. His work centers on helping senior leaders energize their organization with bold transformational strategies that unlock human potential and new market growth. He currently serves as a chief of staff and director of transformation at the Intel Corporation. Welcome to the program, Richard.
Thank you so much for having me, Charles. I don't take opportunities like this for granted. And thank you for all you do to continue to equip, empower managers and leaders, to be better.
Thank you. And I love to start each episode kind of with learning more about you and your background and really what got you interested in this field.
It's a long story, but I'm going to keep it short. For me, it's, you often talk about when we look at work today, people often fall in three categories. One is a job, whereby who you are and what you do are not the same. The other one is when you have a career, there's a degree of who you are and what you do. It's kind of a bit of an overlap. And the third thing is a calling. And I'd say that something who you are and what you do are extremely aligned. So for me, what I do, I see it as a calling. So it's always been a passion of mine to work with leaders, to work with organizations, to be able to align them so you're able to align your strategy, your execution, and your culture to be able to move faster, to be able to go further, and to be able to accelerate results. So I see it more of a calling than a job.
Wonderful. And you were born and raised in Nigeria. You're a chemist by training, but now you're more in that leadership development space in some aspects and with coaching. What got you interested in making that transition?
No, thanks, Charles. Like I said, purpose is the new paycheck. Mm-hmm. I saw the things that I was super excited. I saw the things I was passionate about. I saw the things people came to me for help with regularly. So while the technology aspects I did really well and I was excited about it, but what I saw that what was tugging on my heart at 12 midnight when I woke up in the morning is how do I help leaders? How do I equip? How do I empower them? And also how do we have better teams? How do we have better organizations that are human-centered? Those are the things I dream about. Those are the things I think about. So I wanted my heart, my aspirations, all of it to be aligned. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Wonderful. And today's episode, we're going to talk about different topics that you're really an expert in. And the first one is really, you've done some research on habits of memorable leaders. What are those habits and how can people develop those habits in their lives? So I'd love for you to kind of talk to us a little bit about that background is, what was your research based on so that you could identify what these habits are?
No, thank you so much, Charles. So yeah, before I get to the research aspect, I actually had an experience with the former chief people officer at Intel. So I had a one-on-one with this person and I was in the room. Again, this was the chief people officer of Intel. The person was a senior vice president or an executive vice president. I can't remember at this point in time. And during that meeting, I discovered that this leader that I looked up to, this leader that I respected, was actually taking notes. And Charles, I was shocked. Like, I should be the person taking notes. I should be the person that wants to get to where you want to get to. And the way the leader was, relating with me, speaking with me, I felt like I was the celebrity in the room. And for me, that concept of, the leader as students just really resonated with me. That when you really think of memorable leaders, they make you feel like $1 million. It's not about them. It's about you. And that really struck a chord. And I now began to look, there are thousands of HBR articles, things on Forbes, even a lot of books. And that who are these leaders that get into our discretionary energy? John Maxwell wrote a book in terms which he calls the 5 levels of leadership. And when I saw my interaction with that leader, it was definitely, he wasn't operating from a position perspective. It wasn't a tops-down thing, right? I had somewhat a kind of a relationship with this leader, but what this leader was getting to was the leader as learner. And what that leader was doing is that leader was creating psychological safety. within the room. So that's one of the things that really resonated with me, especially in today's world whereby we need a lot of ideas, and positions shouldn't trump the best ideas to win. So when you see leaders like that who are able to create psychological safety, those are the kind of leaders that really talk to the hearts of their employees, and you want to work with them, you want to work for them. And just quickly saying that in a time whereby we've gone from the Great Resignation, we've gone to, people have called the boomerang employees, people have said the great attrition, now it's quiet quitting. Leadership is now a competitive advantage. So people now look at, who is the leader I want to work for? So again, going back to that leader at that point in time, who was able to create that environment, not because, again, he was here, I was here, from a position hierarchy perspective, he didn't have to do it. But guess what? By creating that environment, I started following him, not just in my head, but also with my heart as well. That this is a leader I want to get to know. This is a leader I want to get, I want to be like when I, use the word grow up.
So I love that, Richard, especially the John Maxwell piece, because he's one of my favorite authors as well. You have as one of your favorite quotes, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And establishing that heart-hand connection is so important, because it's more than just having a technical acumen to be a great leader, right?
Absolutely. And I've been a student of John Maxwell. I'm actually a John Maxwell certified executive coach, trainer, and speaker as well, since so many years ago. And one of the things, exactly the statement you quoted, that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, is one of the things that has actually been a transformational quote and experience in my life. That, people have to connect with you on a personal level first before you do business with them. Anything else is putting the cart before the horse. So that has been very hugely successful. And more often than not, one other thing John Maxwell also speaks about is, as a leader, if you're taking a walk and there's nobody following you, then you're just taking a stroll. So because one of the things about leadership is also building followership. And when I mean followership, it's not a group of followers who just look up to you and just do whatever you want to do, but people who are inspired by your dream, people who are inspired by your vision. They are doing it not because you told them to, you've inspired them, they're doing it because they want to, and it's making a huge difference, in people's lives. So yeah, I really love that from John Maxwell. So if John Maxwell is watching, hi there.
So that's great. Being human is one of those memorable habits that really speak to that connection that you have to make with people, where they know that you care about them. Another thing that came from this study that I thought was really right on, point on, is memorable leaders are also comfortable in admitting they don't have all the answers. Because what you stated before, that develops a high degree of trust and psychological safety, so that people are willing to see their vulnerability and they are perceived as being more authentic, correct?
Absolutely. Let's look at it. In this book, Lead and Disrupt, they gave the analogy of Netflix and Blockbuster. Several years before, the Netflix team reached out to Blockbuster and asked the question, can we be your streaming arm? Cut long story short, it didn't happen. Interestingly, the same year that Blockbuster got off the stock market was the same year that Netflix got on. What happened is that ability for leaders to always not be the judge, the advocates, be the judiciary, is being able to be open. That is there something that we're missing? Is there something we're not aware of? Every one of us has a blind spot, and the people you surround yourself with, how you get your information, is super critical. And also knowing that nobody is a custodian of knowledge. Nobody's a custodian of good ideas. Because you are the CEO or the CFO or whatever title you have, somebody else down below the line can have a great idea. A fun one I often talk about is, let's go back to Isaac Newton. There's this story that talks about everybody saw the apple drop from the tree, but it was only Isaac Newton that asked why. As a result of that, you had the Isaac Newton 3 laws of motion. Isaac Newton was a student in college. At that point in time, they were professors. It was a student that discovered the 3 laws of motion. So it's a theme, again, for anyone who is watching. Never underestimate, the power you bring to the table. Do not let what people say or do not say. You have the voice. You are not an echo, so you have to use it and believe in what you bring.
It's so important with all leaders to realize that they don't have all the answers. I had someone tell me one time that as you go up in your organization to get to higher and higher levels, it's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. So how do you want to be remembered as a leader? That's really should be something that you're thinking about all the time. And you have a great quote by Maya Angelou that's a famous one that people will forget what you said. They're going to forget what you did for them, but they're never going to forget the way you made them feel. And that's so important to take in a leadership context. Would you agree?
I couldn't agree more. Again, going back to that leader that I said, like this experience I had was about 5, 7, 6, 7 years ago, but I still remember it. The person probably did not even know how I was feeling, but it's still something that has stuck. So anytime I run into this person, I'm still in connection, in contact, with this person. And, for people like that, you want to give your discretionary energy because it's not about the job from 9 to 5. You've gone beyond my head. You've touched my heart. And anytime you've touched my heart, you've gotten my attention, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make things happen for you.
Well, that's wonderful. So leaders, especially in trying times like this, they shoulder greater responsibility. And it's no question that challenging times requires usually a different leadership approach. Now, a mutual friend of ours, Marshall Goldsmith, reaffirms that in his book, what got you here won't get you there, is a different approach is needed. And it's so important that leaders stay open-minded, to be adaptable and expand their range to deliver value to all of their stakeholders. Could you offer some of our listeners some tips that they could have in their back pocket or tools they could use to lead during these trying times? Because you mentioned several of those in one of the articles that you wrote and some of the research that you've done for Forbes.
I think, again, a shout out to all the leaders out there who have to shoulder so much responsibility, so much change, because the thing is, leaders are people too. And many times when they're going through the hard work, a lot of the difficult conversations they have to make, there's really many times no shoulder to lean on, nobody, to rely on. So again, a shout out to that. With that said, one of the things, no question asked, we're going through a difficult time. Leaders are going through difficult challenges too. So one of the things that is important is, number one, our leaders have to be human. We have to connect with people, first of all, on an emotional level. We have to be able to connect with people to say, we are going through difficult times as an organization. We are going through difficult times as a country. Even the world economy is going through difficult times. But its understanding is when we come together, when we work together, we're going to figure out a way out. So it's important for leaders to be able to communicate in a way that says, I hear you, I see you, and I feel you. And it's coming from the heart. Because regardless of whatever difficult decisions the leader ends up making, people know that this person made the best decision for the company. It wasn't just all about the profits, because that's when employees start reacting negatively as well. So it's very important that leaders be human-centered. Then, of course, the second thing that is extremely important as well is communication. And when I talk about communication, there's something called a study that was done that is called transactional analysis. And from a transactional analysis perspective is, think of three layers. The first one is parent, adult, child. For most parents, if a parent is having difficulty being able to pay a mortgage, you don't tell your child and say, hey, tell your teacher in school, we can't pay the mortgage. You don't do that. What you tend to do, you protect that information while you're trying to figure things out, because you want the child to be able to focus in school. So again, let's come to the organization. Unconsciously, leaders tend to take that role of parent as well, because they don't want to bother the employees. They want them to focus. But guess what? Employees are not your children. So when you use that approach, what tends to happen is employees start saying, oh, these leaders are not trustworthy. These leaders are hiding something. What does that do? It breaks down trust. So the important thing from a transactional analysis perspective is speaking with your employees as adults, saying, hey, team, we're going through a difficult time. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we're going to figure this out together. If you have ideas, so very important, saying what you can say. And even if there's information you cannot share, let people know. So building that trust is extremely important, during difficult times. And the last thing I'll say regarding that is the aspect of having a common vision. Somebody gave a definition of teams, which I like, which is many hands, one mind. So as a leader, when you're going through a difficult time, which I always think it's an opportunity, every crisis holds an opportunity. How do I create an environment that, though there are many hands who want to solve the problem, but we have just one vision, we have one focus, our priorities are super clear. So that's going to be important as well.
Agree with you. And I expand upon that last point from some of your research that I read, that you rally the troops around a common purpose. You give a great historical example of this, where Americans were so moved by John F. Kennedy's inaugural address, right? His famous quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." It was a call to action to become a rallying cry for patriotism, just in service of a greater good. Like Kennedy, smart leaders, and this is a very astute comment by you, smart leaders, they don't let a crisis go to waste. They leverage it to unite the workforce around a common purpose. They prioritize and communicate with their teams more effectively. And that's so important, I think, for a lot of us to know that, like you stated, this represents an opportunity for all leaders.
Yeah, and one thing I will even add to that is, from a leadership perspective, prioritize the why over the what and the how. So very important, prioritize the why, because even according to a McKinsey study, 70% of people want to do purposeful work. People have gone beyond the paycheck. So when you're able to prioritize the message in terms of the why and the why, then you're able to get people's discretionary energy a lot more.
Couldn't agree with you more. Another one that you've listed through that study is optimism is not optional. That leaders must acknowledge that the current economic reality that they have, and they have to double down on possibilities. Not all storms are out to disrupt your life. And I love this. Some are actually here to clear a path for you.
Absolutely. And that quote was from Paulo Coelho, if I think is a Brazilian musician. And, that for me also comes to the part of the mindset. Because one of the things that Price Pritchett talks about in his book, U Squared, is not about working harder, because you've been working hard all the way, but it's how do I think differently? Because when I change my thinking, then my actions will be different. And because my actions are different, the results I'm getting. So it always comes to the mindset. It comes to the situation that I think this was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was Nelson Mandela, that people said he was in a cell, and they said, "What do you see?" And he said, "Stars." So are we looking, some people, but right in front of him were bars. So it's always left to us that in difficult times, are we looking at opportunities or are we looking at problems? Because you always find what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And during these times, it's also an opportunity to leverage your culture. What your organizational values are really revealed in difficult times, not necessarily in the good times. When seeking solutions and having difficult conversations, leaders should be using their organizational values and culture to design that criteria.
Yeah, let's talk about culture for just a second, Charles. Many times I hear leaders saying that they want to work on their organizational culture. Breaking news, flash alert, you can't do that. Why? Your culture is an outcome. Your culture is a lagging indicator. Let me give you an example in terms of how I describe culture. Assuming, Charles, both of us are in the same room, and all of a sudden the temperature goes to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. What begins to happen? Charles, what do you begin to do? You're wearing a jacket. It goes to 75. What do you do?
I start removing articles of clothing.
Okay. What if it goes to 60 degrees? What do you start to do?
Start putting on more clothing.
That is culture. Culture is for leaders to create an environment without telling people. It influences their behavior. So when leaders are seeing some certain actions or behaviors they like or they don't like, the question they need to be asking is, where are we setting the thermostat at? Because the thermostat, the environment we are creating, is determining behavior. So for leaders, not themselves focusing on culture, it's focusing on the processes, the systems that they are creating that is fostering some certain behaviors to thrive.
Great insight there. Thank you for providing that with culture. So we've talked about some of the habits of memorable leaders and qualities that they need to have when leading during turbulent times. I'd like to spend the remaining time of this episode talking about the people that leaders need in their life. Now, many leaders live in a bubble without even realizing it. This isolation is not necessarily intentional, but a byproduct of the demands of their job, where their scarcest resource is always their time, and leaders need to rely on their inner circle to filter and prioritize business needs. So what have you found from your research and from your experience, your corporate experience, as what are some of those key people that a leader and a successful, effective leader needs in their life?
So this for me is heavily weighted both on research, even more weighted in terms of experience. So when we look at the world we live in today, there's a lot more responsibility that our C-suite, our leaders, it's upon them. So nowadays, people want even their leaders to respond to governance, climate issues, social issues. They want them to comment. Several years ago, that wasn't the case. So there's a lot more responsibility. And at the same time, leaders have to satisfy the different stakeholders, whether it's the stock market, whether it's the communities, whether it's the employees, whether it's the analysts. There are so many things to do. And guess what? They all have 24 hours of the day like we do. So what tends to happen is leaders, and rightfully so, they rely on the people who are closest to them to be able to prioritize so they can focus on the 20% of the things only them can do. What ends up happening is these people they rely on, depending on the quality of the people around leaders, those people have their biases. And in some cases, these people have their agendas as well. So a leader is relying on a small circle of people, depending on if those people are selfless or they're working on their biases or on their own agendas, or even they might not even know. The leader is now taking information from them. The information is not accurate. It's not a true representation of what's happening on the ground. Guess what happens? The problems just scale. So when we now look at the people that leaders have around them, so leaders are not necessarily seeing things as they are. They are seeing things based on their advisors. And those things are only accurate if these advisors have a broad view. So one of the things I wrote in the Forbes articles, again, based on experience and based on even research that I've done, is there are 7 people I believe, that leaders critical they need around them. The first one is the trusted advisor. And the trusted advisor is someone that is really your wing person, is your right-hand person that you can truly trust. Now, let's get practical. People have mortgages to pay. Nobody's going to go home and say, hey, you got a pink slip today, and your partner, spouse high-fives you and says, thank you for being truthful. Thank you for speaking the truth. Now the kids can't go to school tomorrow. So people don't want to risk that on the line. So it's incumbent on leaders. Number one is the people who surround you. You must ask yourself a question. Do you respect their opinions? Because if you don't respect the people who are closest to you, that itself is a problem. Number 2, are you creating an environment that these people can speak up their minds? So for example, as a leader, how many times do the people who are closest to you, how many times do they challenge you? Are they very quick to agree with you? Do they really challenge you? Are they scared and they tell you what they think you can handle, or they tell you what you want to hear? Because Andy Stanley said something, leaders who do not listen are going to be surrounded by people who do not speak. So, but a good test for me is asking yourself, does your team push back on you? Again, they know who is going to make the final decision, but do they have that freedom to be able to express themselves? And John Lennon said something. He said, again, I'm paraphrasing, he said, speaking the truth, doesn't make you a lot of friends, but it makes you the right ones. But guess what? Employees don't want to find out through trial and error if speaking the truth is going to keep them their jobs or not.
Well, what can a leader do to help encourage that? Because you're right. I think a lot of that is created by the leader in the environment to make them speaking the truth safe for the employee.
No, thanks, Charles, for asking that question. And this, when you look at the Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaching, one of the things that we talk about within that group is there are 3 things great leaders need to do. Number 1, you have to be courageous in asking for feedback. And if you imagine if you're going on a journey and you're going on a trip and your cars do not have side mirrors or rear view mirror, that's a casket on the road. It shouldn't be on the road. So being courageous enough to ask for feedback. Then number 2, you have to be able to stick to the process. So you have to be courageous to ask for feedback. Number 2, you have to stick to the process. So those are some of 2 things, is very important for leaders to be able to do.
Yes, courageous enough for feedback, humble enough to receive it, and disciplined enough to follow through. You're right. Marshall advocates those. and really to resist the urge to be defensive, dismissive, or rationalize, which I think a lot of people struggle with when they get feedback that they don't want to hear, right? Their defenses go up and they really shut down any communication from sinking in.
And the other thing Marshall also recommends, which I even do personally for myself, is just say thank you. Because what that thank you just says is, at least go spend some time to go and think about it, for you to go and process it at that point in time. So the thank you is not being dismissive, but at least, and once you've spent some time to think about it, come back to the person who gave you the feedback and thank them for the feedback and just say, well, based on what you said, I've processed it. These are my thoughts. But the important thing here is create a dialogue, because you have a viewpoint probably the other person doesn't see. So when you're able to share, if you can't share that viewpoint or why you make some certain decisions, at least the person might be able to help you with better ways of communicating, those decisions to the rest of the organization.
That's great advice. And we spoke about the trusted advisor. The other one I'd like to hit on a few more is the coach. And I think Marshall has gone a long way to changing this mindset with people that, having a coach is not bad. Great athletes have coaches of every sport. So what's your excuse for not having one? And all of that untapped potential that you can unlock if you have a leadership coach, correct?
No, absolutely. And, Charles, you've said it all. It's when we look at the best athletes in the world, the ones coming to mind right now is Simon Biles, Serena Williams, whether it's Ronaldo, Messi, they just finished the World Cup, and just looking at it in whether it's Federer, whatever sports that, or, Naomi Osaka, whatever field you're in, they have coaches. And these are the best of the best. And like you said, I like how you rightly put it, is what's your excuse if you and I do not have one? So getting a coach is really a thought partner, who helps you to accelerate your journey in becoming your best self. That's really what it is. The coach is not telling you what to do. The answers are coming from you, but somebody who is your thought partner, who holds you accountable and who really helps you to reflect and to dig deep, because all the answers are right there inside of you. So if you want to go faster, if you want to go further, then highly recommend it. Have a coach. The best athletes in the world have one.
Wonderful. So we've unpacked two of them. The other ones I'll just kind of list for everyone, and then I'd like to go into at least one more. So you have one being the sage, another one, the minority voices, a third one, the confidant, and then the one I'd like to go into now is Goliath. And those are the people that keep you up at night. I love how you say that. It's your competitors, disruptors, demanding customers, difficult team members, employees, or bosses. And I love the example you give historically of Abraham Lincoln. If you could just give us more detail around that example and how he used a different approach for working with them.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Charles. One of the things is, again, we're all human beings, right? Let's be fair to each other here and give ourselves grace. It's only human that if something is a pain or causing you pain, it's human tendency, except you're not human, you want to avoid it. You want to eliminate it. You want to get out of it. It's human, and nobody's going to fault you for that. When it comes, and the important thing for great leaders is understanding that people who think differently from you are not your enemies. Very important. Look at the politics of today. If we don't think alike, then you're an enemy. We see a lot of toxicity that has created in the political world. In the corporate world, we cannot let things degenerate that bad. And it's truly understanding, and going back to the Abraham Lincoln phenomenon, his three rivals, he actually put them on his cabinet. Because why did he do that? Because it was going to be painful. But Abraham Lincoln decided to put the country above his ambition. He decided to say, I'd rather have a team that is costing me personally a little bit of pain, but we're able to deliver value for the country. So he put these three groups of people together. He was able to contain the ideas. But more importantly is when you begin to sharpen things, right, the truth, it only gets better from there. And for him, his measure of success was not him being the loudest voice. His measure of success was that the country, the American people, were getting better ideas, better leaders, and that was his measure of success versus his, I said this, I had the last say. So very, very important. And for your Goliaths, they are too big to miss. So the thing is, you don't have to go looking for them. They will find you. So now, to test your effectivity, as a great leader is, what do you do with them? And my question to you, like Abraham Lincoln, is embrace them. People who think differently, who see things from a different perspective, are not your enemies. They're not. So embrace them. And again, we're all human beings. When they feel heard, when they feel that, somebody is listening to them, you find the truth somewhere in the middle.
So don't distance yourself from them. Embrace them like Abraham Lincoln did. 3 of his biggest competitors he placed on his own cabinet. And you need to surround yourself with diverse voices. That's going to sharpen your thinking, but it's so counter to what many people want to do. That's just not their default setting, that they want to have those individuals in a team, in a meeting, as part of a group in which they have to communicate and connect with more, right?
Yeah, Charles, there's one you went over that but I want to speak on it a little bit.
Sure.
And that particular one is the minority voices. And the minority voices are the employees, the 80% of the people who actually do the work that satisfy your clients, your stakeholders, the consumers, your customers. And the minority voices, the employees, are so important because they are the boots on the ground. And personally, I believe whoever sweeps the room should choose the broom. There are too many times whereby leaders make decisions and they are so far away from the actual work that is being done. And many times they are making this decision not having an experience. And what happens? A lot of those decisions, are dead on arrival. So it's very important that leaders are taking time, again, just like you make time for your customers, to make time for your employees. Is whether that is through the town halls, whether that is through your employee surveys, but really taking time, because if your leaders, like people say a happy wife is a happy life. The truth is, happy employees is a happy organization, increases the bottom line, it increases innovation, and your customers are happier because happy employees deliver more innovative products. So it's extremely important that the larger employee base feel heard. Again, there are different ways you can scale this, but it's just so important because like you mentioned earlier, Charles, this is what creates a common purpose. I have a leader who sees me, who hears me, and who feels me. That's a leader I will go to war for. That's a leader when war comes to the door front, I'm not going to go with a company who is going to give me double the salary, because you know what? I can always get a double salary anywhere I go. But this leader, the culture he creates, that cannot be bought, and people will stick around for that.
Great stuff there. And love that discussion of those that are in your lens. And it doesn't really have to be lonely at the top. Remember, you always are viewing reality through the lens of the people around you. So make sure that those people around you are the right people, giving you accurate feedback, but don't accept it as the absolute truth. Like you said, put your feet to the floor and get to know the frontline employees. Do your rounds to make sure that they feel heard, understood, and you connect with them as well. And then hopefully, as a result of all these things we talked about, with these habits, with these characteristics of dealing with turbulent times and surrounding yourself with the right people, you and your organization are going to be set up for success regardless of the environment you're in. Even though, today we commonly term it as a VUCA environment, where it's so volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and likely it's not going away, correct?
That's true. And Charles, there's another one I just want to put up there. I think I put it in that Forbes article as a bonus. Martin Luther King said something. He says, life's most urgent and important question is, what are we doing in the service of others? John Maxwell also said something. He said, a leader who doesn't have a successor is a failure. Think about your 15, 20, 30 years of work. Then all of a sudden, you are not in position anymore. And within 1 or 2 or 3 years, everything just tumbles. That will happen if you're not investing in the next generation of leaders. So asking yourself, CEO, CFO, whatever seat you sit on, is if I left this place today by choice or for whatever reason, I have to leave this place, is my legacy going to live on? And your legacy is going to live on through the hearts of people that you've touched. So very important that leaders are also taking time to invest. I know you're super busy. Invest in the next generation of leaders. We all know about the Dead Sea. So it receives and never gives, and that's why it's called the dead. So it's just making sure that you are investing in that next generation of leaders. Make it prioritize, whether it's a group of 15, 20, 30, or whatever the number is, whether it's once a month, once a week or something, it's extremely important. That's your future. Without that team of people there, then your legacy will be like yesterday's newspaper, which doesn't carry much. Well,
Such great insights there and a great way to end the episode today. Thank you so much, Dr. Richard Osibanjo, for joining me today. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Charles. You've been a great host. So, hey, everyone there. So feel free to look for me on LinkedIn, Dr. Richard Osibanjo. You can also find me on Twitter, Dr. Richard Osibanjo as well. I have something called Rich Nuggets. It's also on YouTube. I put it on my LinkedIn channel, so feel free to reach out. I have 2 books on Amazon. The first one is Turning Points. The second thing is 5 Essential Things Every Leader Must Get Right. And a third one is in the works that will be coming up soon.
Wonderful. Thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Charles, for having me. This the highlights of my day. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share with others and post about it on social media. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which has video recordings of all the episodes of this podcast, along with bite-sized segments called single servings that are designed to answer your most pressing leadership and management questions. Remember, until next time, it's not what you know that counts, but what you do consistently that makes a difference.